Joran DerSloot, he is the one who, well, he's admitted to killing Natalie Holloway. He's also admitted to Stephany Flores. He's spending time currently in Peruvian prison for that death. Also serving time consecutively now for Natalie Holloway there as well. Should he ever get out? He's supposedly supposed to serve the rest of that 20 some year sentence in the United States, but likely that will never take place. He's a man who lies, a lot of lies, manipulates, cheats to get his way. It's hard to really believe anything that he has had to say, including the most recent confession to the murder of Natalie Holloway. There's a new documentary coming out on Peacock this week about it. It's called The Lies of Joran DerSloot. Joining me to discuss, retired FBI Special Agent Robin Dreeke. There's a lot in this case. I don't even know really where to begin, but we're talking about Joran. So, yeah, I mean, there's so many lies that this man has told left and right. I mean, how do you even begin to know what is real and what is not when there's not necessarily the reality to square it up with?
Yeah, you hit it. This guy is a pathological liar. I taken a hard look at this in the last couple days and months sometimes, and I know lots of colleagues that spent a lot of time analyzing him, his psychological behavior, and all that. And what I found, what's really interesting is there's not a lot of solid science on deception and lying
Hmm.
because it's a very challenging thing. If we could predict lies in individuals, there wouldn't be any issues in the world. I mean, even the best nonverbal statement analysis people in the world are only 50% accurate when assessing deception and
Hmm.
detection. So it's a challenging area, and also the science behind what. And there's one thing in the research I was doing that really struck me. So let's put aside if he's got genetics and biology that predisposes him to being borderline personality disorder, all things I can't assess, and none of
Sure.
us, sitting in the armchair YouTube quarterbacking can assess. But there's a striking thing, again, as you and I love chatting about that arc of behavior and trauma when early growing up. One of the things that is interesting to consider is that if you get into the habit of lying, and this is because we all have exaggerations, we all do things every day to avoid shame, to avoid uncomfortable situations, avoid being rude, inconsiderate, and all these things. And I some people say, "Oh, people are lying all the time." To me, those aren't lies. To me, that's effective communication to have a healthier relationship, to
Hmm.
not be as crass as we might otherwise be, and also to maintain our own value and self-worth. And so we're not necessarily lying, we're exaggerating, we're omitting all these kind of things. That's normal human behavior for healthy interactions.
Yeah.
But for people like Vandersloot, you get in a habit of lying and deception where you don't even need to do for those things. You are just have a compulsion to do it. And one of the things that struck me when I was doing this research on this one that makes a lot of sense outside of the genetics and biology side, but on the learned behavior side, is I wonder, with this curiosity that I have, what was going on in his life when he was younger that telling the truth was wrong.
Hmm.
In other words, by sharing things that was truthful, he was not feeling safe by telling the truth. And so when we don't feel safe, because that is our core human motivation.
Hmm.
We're going to do all we can to feel safe and secure in our environment. And for some reason, again, outside of could it be 100% genetics and biology with him? I don't know. But if it wasn't, or if it's a combination of the two, there was something while he was in those younger formative years that he did not feel safe telling the truth. And it
Hmm.
became a habitual arc in his life.
Yeah, I mean that's a very interesting way of looking at it. It makes a total sense, and the
Yeah.
question is, what is that? I mean, or was there anything? I guess that could be a question too. Sometimes, are we looking at individuals who the bar is here of what we'll do for normal human interaction, where we'll exaggerate things sometimes. The context may be adjusted a little bit just for, as you were saying, just living life and normal human interactions, not lying, but just being out there so you're not crass, so you're communicating effectively. What about if you don't know where that bar is or don't ever have that bar and it's just kind of, well, if I go to this extreme it works. And he was able to see if he goes to certain extremes with women specifically, looks like he got certain reactions, looks like he got certain attention certain ways. And they just kept working for him and working for him and then not knowing where to stop. I guess that's the part of someone like this is the stopping where you obviously he's killed two women now. God knows if he's done two, how many more others are out there on the island that doesn't really have a whole lot of very strict, homicide laws in place or investigations in place. Um, so it makes you wonder, like, where is that? What, like, why does he never register that in his mind of this is going too far? Manipulating is one thing, but going to the point of taking people's lives is another. Maybe that goes back to where we're talking about some of the disorders that where it's missing. There that remorse, that empathy is just not there.
Well, like you and I have said even before we started recording today, each one of these cases might have commonalities with other ones, but they're so specifically unique.
Hmm.
And this is one of them. So we have a habitual chronic manipulator and liar, but there's a lot of those people in the world.
Hmm.
Doesn't make them homicidal killers either, but
No.
he's now got that cascaded on top, and so in order to do those kind of things without a look of or an appearance of any remorse or regret, we have someone who with a lack of empathy, so which is indicative again without my psych background saying we're most likely dealing with high narcissism psychopathy.
Hmm.
And so, is this, so think about this too is would you categorize him as a serial killer or just a homicidal maniac? Or, I mean, see what I mean? It's just,
Yeah.
but so it's not, so he's not just a habitual liar that manipulates. There's another layer of depravity in there because he kills people.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the difference. And that's an interesting point to make. How frequently in society or how frequent are these people found in society? Not necessarily to the homicidal level, but able to manipulate and able to do certain things certain ways. I'd imagine that there'd be a very high rate of people like this in government, especially like elected officials and things of
Like
that
what I
nature.
do. I mean, I've
Um,
recruited spies.
well,
Yes.
yeah. Well, I'm talking more like like politicians and things of that nature that are there, that can easily woo your crowd one way and woo the crowd the other way for whatever they need to do. In other areas of high authority, is that an accurate kind of assumption that these traits could play well in certain areas for the job that's needed, but obviously horrible if used almost recreationally in the case of Joran Vandersloot.
Yeah. He was doing what I call carnival tricks.
Mhm,
And carnival tricks are things where people use, as Robert Cialdini writes about in his book of influence, things that are levers of influence on others, which are can be very manipulative. And manipulation is a self-serving action without transparency. That's how I define manipulation. And so when people are using levers of influence to get you, and, I use very specific words here, to get you to do something, convince you of an opinion, to to influence you, to persuade you, all those words, even though they might be a little softer, like influence and persuade, they're still getting someone to take an action that you want them to take.
mhm,
That's manipulation when you don't have transparency. So, all these tools and techniques of influence, persuasion, manipulation can be used for good as well if you're using them to inspire someone to action. And if you're
mhm.
doing so with transparency, openness, and
Yeah.
vulnerability, so yes, to answer your question, it's my long narrative Robin answer of yes, they can be used for very, very good levers of inspiration because when you're inspiring someone, you are being a resource for them, unlocking a need in their lives, and you're equipping them with tools in order to move forward on that path.
Mhm,
And so you can use the same tools, techniques to do what I call the carnival tricks, where you getting someone to do something, to perform a certain task, to do something a certain way, to share a bit of information that's not in their best interest. And those are manipulations. And that's where, guys like Vandersloot are doing just that. They're using the same tools for the dark arts because because they objectify human beings because they have that lack of empathy, as opposed to someone who's going to use those same skill sets of behavior for good because they're trying to be a resource to be a betterment in someone else's life. And that's where inspirational leaders come from. So, Same tools and
Oh,
techniques, though.
well,
Different
I
different
think you may have
enacting of
just
them.
found a good path for him once he's out. Carnival barker. I think he could get
Yep.
a lot of
Call them
people.
carnival tricks.
Exactly. There we go. That's his skill set once he's out in only 20 some years. Yeah, shocking
Which
story.
isn't enough to me.
Not at all. Not at all. Hey, it's Tony Brueski. If you like the podcast, be sure to like, subscribe, and press that bell so you don't miss any of our updates on the cases we're following for you right here at the Hidden Killers podcast from True Crime Today. And thanks